Welcome back to Goodnight Lighthouse. I'm Miss Dorothy, and I'm here to read you another story. And wow, am I excited because it's summertime, and we've been reading lots of books about summer and vacations and people headed to the beach and on other trips. And tonight, we're going on a trip with our favorite little monkey. That's right. This is Curious George Goes to the Beach. Curious George goes to the beach. Curious George is going on vacation, and he's going to go to the beach. I wonder what happens when he gets there. Does he have a good time? Does he meet people? Does he play in the sand? So much to find out on Curious George's trip to the beach. We know he's going to be curious, and we need to find out what he sees when he goes to the beach. Are you ready to get inside this Curious George book with Miss Dorothy? Good. I need you to sit up and listen up, because here we go. Curious George Goes to the Beach by Margret and H.A. Ray. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today the man had a surprise for George. He took George to the beach. They found a spot on the warm sand. Then another surprise. George saw his friend Betsy. "Look, Betsy," her grandmother said. "It's Curious George." But Betsy did not even smile. She had never been in the ocean before. She was scared. "I know you're a good swimmer," the man told her. "You'll be fine once you get in the water." Feeling better, Betsy walked towards the shore with her grandmother. George helped spread the beach blanket and set aside their lunch. He was looking forward to a picnic, but it was not yet time to eat. Wow, George is all ready for that picnic, but he has to wait. It was time to play. In no time, George was having fun. He learned a new game. He dug in the sand, and he made a new friend. Monkeys are very good at making friends. When he took a break, George watched the lifeguard. The lifeguard sat in a special chair. Sometimes he blew a whistle. And sometimes he looked through binoculars. It looked like fun to be a lifeguard. George was curious. Could he be a lifeguard? Before long, the lifeguard took a break. Here was George's chance. Watching the crowd from up in the special chair, George felt just like a lifeguard. He looked through the binoculars. There was a lot to see at the beach. Look at George sitting up there pretending to be a lifeguard. He saw seagulls flying high above, and he saw Betsy on the shore below. She still had not been in the water. Then the lifeguard saw George. "Hey!" he yelled. "That's no place for a monkey." George thought it was a fine place for a monkey, but he did not want to cause trouble, so he climbed down. Back at the beach blanket, George was hungry for a snack. No one would miss just one cracker, thought George. He took one out and put it on a napkin. It looked good. Now if he only had some cheese. Uh-oh, what happened to his cracker? Well, he would just have to get a new one. George found another cracker, then turned back around. But now his cheese was gone. Who could be taking his snacks? George was curious. He put down his cracker and waited. Who's taking the snacks? Now George saw who was taking his treats. It was a seagull, and he was still hungry. George took out another cracker, and the bird took it right out of his hand. What fun to feed a seagull. George saw more seagulls down by the water. Betsy was there too. George was curious. Could those seagulls be hungry? Indeed, they were hungry. Soon a whole flock had gathered. George could not feed them fast enough. Luckily, Betsy was glad to help. Out of the basket came more crackers, cookie, a cake, and even the bread for sandwiches. Still, the birds were hungry. But when George reached for more snacks, the basket was gone. He and Betsy were having so much fun they didn't notice the tide coming in. Oh no! They didn't notice the picnic basket was floating out to sea. George felt bad. He hadn't meant to lose the basket. Could there be a way to catch it? George thought and thought. Then he remembered the lifeguard. George was no lifeguard, but to save the basket he knew just what to do. Quickly he found a float and carried it to the water. Jumping aboard, George began to paddle. He paddled out a little farther and a little farther and a little farther until finally he reached the basket. Betsy cheered. Then as George paddled back to the beach, Betsy swam out to meet him. Good job, Betsy. She's not afraid anymore. Everyone was glad to see George safe on the shore. The lifeguard, who had seen everything from his chair, said, "That was some rescue." George felt proud. The man with the yellow hat picked up the basket. He was curious. "George, this is our basket?" he asked. Poor George. After all that, the basket was empty. There would be no picnic on the beach, and it was all his fault. Then Betsy's grandmother said, "Won't you join us for lunch? We have plenty. And look, now we have a reason to celebrate thanks to George." They did have a reason to celebrate. Betsy was in the water and wasn't scared anymore. She was having fun. After everyone joined Betsy and George for a swim, it was time to eat at last. There were sandwiches and chips, bananas, cookies, and watermelon. There was plenty for everyone, and there was even a little for guests. Look, the bird's back. He's going to take that bread. The end. Curious George had a very adventurous time at the beach. Did you see everything that happened? Did you see the picnic basket in the water? Oh my, it looked like it was going to be a disaster, but it wasn't. Curious George made friends, and Curious George ended up having a great vacation at the beach. I am so glad we read this together. I'm so glad we're going on these summertime vacation adventures as we read our books together, because that's a fun thing to do. You know, even if you can't go to the beach yourself, you can read about the beach, all these stories. It's almost like going on a trip yourself. And if you do go get on a trip yourself, you can take a book along and go on other adventures. That's the great thing about reading, the wonderful thing about books. I'm so glad we got together today and went on this little trip with Curious George. But now it's time for all my little monkeys to hop off to bed. I need you to get under your covers, get cuddled up, curled up, ready for a really good night's sleep. And if you're headed out on vacation with Mom and Dad, remember there's one thing that you can do that will make the vacation fabulous for everybody. Obey, and obey right away. And then come back and see Miss Dorothy. I'm going to be sitting right here, ready to read another book to you. Bye! Thanks for reading with Miss Dorothy. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope you'll come back soon to read another. What's your favorite book? Drop Miss Dorothy a note and let me know. I'll go find it, and I'll read it to you. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you soon.